Good morning. My name is Dylan Hackbarth, and I am one of the high school counselors at Edina High School. First, I want to say welcome and thank you for joining us. In an effort to best support our students in this time of COVID, we are bringing you a live video or a live presentation about the post-secondary planning process at Edina High School this year. With that, I want to introduce my colleagues. Sandra Schmidt, Jules Block, and Robin Dineco. They will be presenting to you today about our presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand it on over to them.
Good morning, seniors. We are here to talk to you about the process of applying to schools. We're going to be touching on a variety of different things. First is we kind of like to give students an overview of where students have applied to before their senior year. So this past year, the top 10 schools that were applied to are on the left-hand side of the screen that you're looking at, and then the top 10 institutions that were attended. And you'll see some commonalities between the two lists of applied to and attended. U of M is number one on both sides, and then University of Wisconsin-Madison, 177 applied to and 26 attended. So it's just fun to take a look at to see kind of the past history of the classes that went before you. So looking at last year, 85% of the class from last year, 53% went to applied to a public institution and 47% private. We also had 10% of the class apply and attend at a community college, 5% military, and over 202 universities and colleges were represented. So the most important thing applying when you're looking at the schools to apply is making sure that it's a good fit for you. Whether that's a 4-year institution, 2-year, a culinary program, military, you're going to take a gap year, you're going to go straight to work. It's all about what's going to be a good fit for you. So we want to make sure that you're looking at the school in all of its aspects. Is it going to be a good financial fit for you and your family? Is it going to be a great place where you can learn and you can grow socially and emotionally? All of you can get into college. It's really a buyer's market. And so I don't want you to buy into like that, this school only accepts like 5% of the applicants. It's that there's so many institutions in our country, in Canada and overseas. I have a student going to Dublin this year from 2020, class of 2020. And so just know that there's institutions everywhere and that you all can get into college, but you have to find the right fit for you. So the reason this screen is up is we remind you of all of the tasks that have been assigned to you up until now. And so that's freshman through junior year. If you go to your Naviance little app, if you will, on your homepage, you click on it, you go to your portal, and it says tasks. If you click on task, you'll see what we've assigned to you and what you have done and what you haven't done. And so if you really are looking to be introspective and finding the schools that would be great fits for you, it's important to take care of the tasks because we assign those tasks to help you know yourself better and to help you know what schools would possibly be a great fit for you. So admissions decisions, we're looking at, the first one that we're looking at is early decision. Early decision is a binding agreement, meaning that you can only apply to one school early decision. You apply early, usually by November 1st, to your first choice school. You receive an admission decision from the college well in advance of the usual notification date, usually by December. Some schools have early decision 1 and early decision 2. Remember that you can only apply to one school early decision. So if you maybe apply early decision and they move you to regular decision pool after that, they're like, we want more time to look at your application, and they move you to the regular decision pool, that does open you up to be able to apply early decision 2 to another institution. Early action, a lot of schools these days use early action. It's non-binding. You can apply to as many early action schools at the same time. Typically, the registration or the application is due by November 1st, typically. It could be December 1st, December 15th. And you would find out sometime in January or February whether or not you were accepted to that institution. And then you can apply to other schools' regular admission decisions. Again, there's nothing binding, so you can apply. Some have early action 1 and some have early action 2. Again, not binding. It really doesn't matter. Other admissions decisions, it's just regular admission. Rolling admissions. Rolling admissions is where you can apply anytime throughout the year. One of the schools that is popularly applied to is Iowa State, where you apply 24 to 48 hours, you hear a decision because it's formula driven. And so that's what rolling means. It's just all throughout the year you can apply. And open admission means that anyone who applies gets admitted. What matters to colleges? The number one factor is how you are doing in your regular classes, in your college prep classes, and then your overall grade point average. Other factors that they consider is extracurricular activities, what your essay sounds like, letters of recommendation, and demonstrated interest. We'll get to more about letters of recommendation in a little bit. And demonstrated interest, what that means is, have you been following them on a social media platform? Have you been following their Instagram? Have you done a virtual tour? Because that's really what we're doing in the state of affairs right now, is virtual tours. How to find out what admission factors are important to college. There's a grid that's hyperlinked right here, the college data grid. It hasn't been updated for the meaning they haven't updated the 2021 because there's so many factors that are still changing with schools going away from SAT and ACT requirements. But as soon as we put in the link for the 1920, have an idea. The best way to have the most accurate information is going to the actual college website and seeing what their admissions requirements are or what's super important to them. But like, for example, if we click on this and we go to University of California, Berkeley, and how I just mentioned that demonstrated interest could be a factor in your application process. Well, for University of California system, just as a whole, demonstrated interest comes not as a factor at all of whether or not you're admitted to that school. So this is a helpful tool to kind of let you know what's really important to institutions. College entrance exams. So there's two, predominantly the ACT and the SAT. What I'm showing you right now is the dates that have been set for our testing here at Edina for the ACT and SAT. And while I just have to say that while we are having these dates up for you, a lot of schools, over 1,500, and I'm going to get to that slide here in a second, over 1,500 schools plus have gone for the fall or test blind or anything along those lines. So I would be remiss, even though I'm posting these dates for you, so that you know when ACT and SAT dates are coming up, just know that more and more schools every day are going test optional. So these are the dates here at Edina, and then here are the dates for the SAT. I do know that the September and October dates for here at Edina for the ACT and SAT, that there's still spots available. even though it would be a late registration and you would have to pay an extra fee for that. Just know that we do have some extra spots here for both of those dates. Things to remember, I just mentioned, I'm a little bit ahead of myself, that 1,500 plus are not requiring a standardized test because of the circumstances surrounding COVID. And we hyperlinked this little website right here because they're updating the list every day of the schools that are test optional. Your curriculum and grades are the #1 factor in admissions. Colleges will either take ACT or SAT. They do not have a preference for which one. If you're applying to specific programs, it is important to look to see if there's an SAT subject test that's required, typically in engineering or science programs. It is your responsibility, once you have your scores in hand, ability to send your scores from ACT or College Board to each institution. We do not house your scores here, and so it is your job to go on those different platforms and send the scores. We encourage you to request your scores be sent out as soon as you have them, and it can take up to 2 weeks for scores to be received. So I'm going to give you a little scenario. You're like, Mrs. Daneko, my deadline is November 1st for my school. We would say to request your scores all the way back in October to ensure that they get there on time. Ways to apply. Right here is hyperlinked, like kind of the step-by-step process here at Edina. So you can always click on that and print it out for you so that you can kind of like do little check marks beside each one. There's different types of applications. So one of them is an institutional application. That means that just their school has an online application just for them. You fill out on your Naviance side, you go to colleges that you're applying to, you put in the college that you're applying to, and then we send your transcripts for you to that school. Talk about is the Common App. So like there's a big platform called the Common App that 700 plus institutions work with that you could apply to a whole bunch of schools all at the same time through the Common App. And it's kind of like a time saver, if you will. And again, it's the same process where you go to colleges that you're applying to, you put your schools that you want on there, and then you tell us how you're applying. And so there's like a little drop down, and Miss Block is going to show us how to do that. That you just drop down and it says institutional, it says Common App. You just click Common App, and then you can apply to a whole bunch of schools that way. And then Common App link with requirements. It just like for letting you know how when you go to Common App and you're applying that way, if it requires letters of recommendation, if it requires an additional essay. So this is another hyperlink that can help show you what the schools require in addition to just you filling out the application. And now it's Miss Block. I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hey, everybody, seniors, parents, guardians who are on with us today. We're excited to be here with you virtually. And again, as reference, we'll have this PowerPoint on our Class of 2021 website. So Ms. Daneko talked about finding your right fit and narrowing down your options for after you graduate, and talked a little bit about if college is on your docket to look at how to apply. So going to the college's website is very important to find out their means of applications, whether it be institutional application directly on their website or Common App. And so once you do that, if you're applying to college, whether that be 2-year, 4-year, community or technical college, you are going to notice that in the application checklist that they're going to want school materials from us sent on your behalf. And we want to make that really easy for you. So in the comfort of your own home or anywhere where you have wireless access, you can request school materials from us that we'll send on your behalf using Naviance. So I'm going to show you a demo of how that looks, and the next slides are going to kind of get into the details of that, which have hyperlinks with the videos there for you. So just kind of bear in mind that this is something you can access later if we're going too fast, and this is pretty important, especially if you've already started applications and are wondering how to do some of those steps. So I'm going to show you a demo. You're going to over to the right because I'm going to a different monitor, which is kind of fancy for me. So I'm going to go to a demo, and you log into Naviance by going to the school portal. Okay, so there's an icon that looks like Naviance, and you click on it. All of you should be saying, hey, Miss Block, I know that because we use Naviance all the time because we've used it like forever, right? And so as Ms. Daneko talked about under the My Planner tab and tasks, you can hit that and you can see all the activities we've done to date, screencasts and PowerPoints, from doing a college search to finding your right fit college to making a smart college list. So if you're still in the exploration stage, check that out. You can also go to the Class of 2021 website, which is the place where we put everything from newsletters to these activities, to these websites, to these PowerPoints, to these presentations, and all the directions about college. So just wanted to point that out. So this is the Naviance homepage, and I'm going to scroll down, and I want to quickly show you that colleges want to talk with you right now. You might still be deciding what you want to do after you graduate. You might still want to talk to colleges about what their school is like. So we have a ton of colleges that want to talk with you right now. They're also offering a ton of virtual means for you to explore their college by going directly to their website. But we also have colleges who have Edina representatives. And so we have a host of colleges wanting to come and talk to you virtually. It might have been hard to get on campus last spring because of our world crisis and things like that. So as a result, you're going to be able to see that there's a ton of schools coming to talk with you. And if you click on the school, you're going to be able to click and register and get 15 minutes prior to the time a virtual link to be able to talk with that college rep. So kind of take note of that, okay? So it's super important. If you by chance had colleges you're thinking about in your colleges list from last spring, you'll get an automatic email from those colleges to be able to know when they're coming and register and talk with them. So just wanted to point that out, a couple of things about Naviance. But back to the demo. The demo is going to show you, if you're looking at college, whatever the college, you're going to need school materials sent on your behalf. Most of the colleges are simply going to need a transcript, but other schools might need more. So I'm going to give you a demo. The number one thing that you have to do is when you're applying to colleges, and by the way, you don't have to be completely finished with your college application to submit your request for materials from us, but what you want to do is you want to go to Naviance, and you're going to go to the college's home screen. From there, you're going to be able to see a number of tabs, and I'm going to show you the number one step that you take to submit and request us to send materials on your behalf using Naviance is you can click. The number one thing is to put colleges that you're applying to. That's the first step ever. And there's two ways to do that. The first step is you can go to colleges that you might have put in your colleges you're thinking about from last spring or before, and you can simply move your application. So in this example, this student last spring put in Mankato State as a school they're interested in. Now they've started to apply and they realize they need a transcript. So all you do is click right here next to under colleges I'm applying to, click on this little tab here to check it and move the application, and it moves it over to your colleges you're applying to. The second step then is to request your transcript. But before you do that, it's going to ask you some questions. And it's really, really important that you know the answers to these questions. Many colleges, and when you put them under your colleges you're applying to, have different deadlines. You need to know which deadline you're shooting for and give us time to be able to process your school material. So Ms. Daneko talked about the different kinds of application deadlines that are out there. And you'll notice if you click on the toggle that there's only two for Mankato. Rolling, which is just continual, decision deadline, which is August 15th, which is essentially rolling kind of. So it's next August. So you would put rolling. And if you've sent your application already, go ahead and check that box, but you don't need to have completed your application entirely if you're requesting your materials to be sent from us. Next, you would add and request transcripts. And so that is one way of requesting colleges you're applying to. The second way under the colleges home screen is to go to colleges I'm applying to. So if you've never put a college on your colleges you're thinking about, or those schools are no longer schools you're applying to, the first step again is to request a college on your colleges I'm applying to for us to kind of initiate sending your materials. You'll notice that this student already requested Augsburg on their colleges they're applying to. You'll notice again that that's rolling, and you'll notice this icon here. This icon over for Mankato State basically lets you know the only way to apply to Mankato is an institutional application. Again, you find that out by the college's website. You'll notice that Augsburg gives you a choice, either an institutional application or by using the common application, which Ms. Daneko talked about. This student said they were not going to apply using the common app, so therefore, up here that says match your common app, well, they don't have to do that because they are not applying common application using the common app, which is a consortium of over 800 colleges using one app. They decided to apply directly to the institution, so they aren't going to use common app. If you are using the common app, in order for us to send anything off on your behalf electronically, you have to match your Naviance and common app accounts. This lets us talk with each other and marry each other and send your stuff electronically. It's super simple. You click that match button and you just put the common app, the actual email you use for common app, and match your accounts, and then you're good to go. Again, if you're not using the common app, then you are simply going to ignore this, and you're going to, the first step for us to send anything off, add a college. So again, either the colleges I'm thinking about, move it over, and if you don't have that, let's just say you want to apply to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, because we know that's popular out there, and it might be a school that you're interested in. So if you start typing the name of the college, you'll see it pop up. And again, this toggle tells you the different deadlines. The University of Minnesota Twin Cities does have what Ms. Daneko talked about, an early action deadline where you can apply and not be committed, but apply by November 1 and hear back earlier from them if you're accepted or not. And again, as far as if you would click this toggle, and let's say you did use the Common App. And then if you've submitted your application, you would click here or not. If you're not done, that's okay. But then you add and request a transcript. You would click initial and request and finish. And it brings you back to this great graphic organizer for you, where you have these 3 colleges where you've requested your transcript and you're good to go. So colleges I'm applying to, number 1, request your transcript, number 2, and then, and only if you need a letter of recommendation, you have 2 ways to request a letter of recommendation from your teacher. If you're needing a letter of recommendation from your counselor, it's different. You have to communicate that to your counselor. But for teachers, you have to put them in Naviance, because then they get an email to know to upload your letter of recommendation. And if it's a Common App, they also upload what's called a teacher letter of recommendation report. And then they're able to submit it on your behalf. So only if you need a letter of recommendation, and I emphasize only because not all colleges require a letter of rec, and some only require 1, and typically the maximum only on a select few require 2 letters of rec from a teacher. There's 2 ways you would request a letter of recommendation from your teacher. First and foremost, you should need to ask them, hey, are you willing to write me a letter of recommendation? And then ask them that they have a form that you need to fill out, or on our high school website, we have an actual teacher letter of rec kind of vignette for you to fill out so that they know you kind of a little bit more than maybe what they remember in your class. So 2 ways to request a letter of rec from a teacher. Right on this screen, you can go to letters of recommendation, which is from your colleges I'm applying to platform. Sorry, it was taking a second. And then it brings you here. This is where you would add a request and click on your teacher. So let's say you were having Mr. Barron write you a letter of recommendation. And from here, you're able to either say you want him to send them to all colleges you're applying to, or select which ones. You'll notice Augsburg does not require, Mankato does not require, and the University of Minnesota does not require a teacher letter of rec. So we again emphasize only ask if you need one. You'll also notice that Augsburg does allow one. So if you wanted to ask Mr. Barron, you certainly could, and you could click that. But if you tried to put other schools or tried to put another teacher in there, they wouldn't be able to write for you because they only allow one letter of rec. So please be mindful of that. Once you request a letter of rec from a teacher using Naviance, you can write them a little note saying thank you, and then you would click submit. I'm going to cancel that so Mr. Barron doesn't get a request to write a letter for this generic student. But the other way to request a letter of recommendation, if you're just coming in here and you forgot to do that, or you wanted to add another school to your colleges you're applying to and ask a teacher again, you need to go back to them if you add schools. You would go down to the colleges I'm applying to tab, click on letters of rec, and it's going to bring you right back to that screen that I showed you. So again, colleges I'm applying to, request your transcript, and only if you need a teacher letter of rec, you would request that on Naviance. Those are the 3 steps. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Nico. If we can pull your PowerPoint back up, we have a bunch of slides that are essentially reviewing exactly what I talked about. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I mean, this first screen is the video that's going to walk you through how to request your transcript. We talked about that. So if you wanted to go back and watch the video, you certainly could. We talked about how to put colleges I'm applying to on, and there again, how to request transcripts. So we talked about that demo. Next slide here. Again, another vehicle to request transcripts. I showed you the demo for that, but those actually have hyperlinks with the video to review if you wanted to watch it again. So we ask that you do that, you know how to do it, so that we can really make it seamless for you. Okay, so let's assume that you are finding college apps to be super expensive and you and your family, your parents, your guardians aren't able to pay for the application fees. We want to help you with that. If you're using the Common App, there's an actual icon that you can click that requests a fee waiver, and we get it automatically to send them a fee waiver for you and to verify that you need a fee waiver to not have to pay your application fees. If you're actually not applying the Common App, check out your college's website to find out what their process is for fee waivers. They sometimes have institutional fee waivers you can fill out. Otherwise, check in with your counselor. We're more than happy to fill out a fee waiver for you so you don't have to incur an expense like that if you should need it. Moving on to the next slide here, we wanted to talk a little bit, I already did, about recommendations, but wanted to emphasize the counselor recommendation part. You'll notice that you don't request us on Naviance to write a letter of recommendation on your behalf as counselors. We ask a few things of you. Number 1, find out if you need one. If you do need one, there's an icon here that brings you to a there that you fill out for us. This gives us a holistic version of you inside and outside of the classroom so we can write a really good letter for you. There's an optional parent questionnaire there as well, which also gives us some good information about you. And again, we only ask that we ask if you need a letter from us, and only if you need to fill that packet out, and that you give us time to write it. Moving on to the next screen, teacher rec part that I already talked about, I believe, in the next slide. So it's, again, how to request a teacher letter of rec. I showed you on Naviance, but it kind of walks you through those steps. And there is a video, again, on how to request a teacher on Naviance. So if you wanted to review what I showed you earlier, if I went too fast, that's a little like 3-minute video to show you how to do that. So we kind of talked about that demo. So I'm going to hand it over to Michelle now.
Awesome. Thanks, Ms. Block. The next thing we want to talk about are deadlines. And if you take nothing, well, you're going to take a lot away from this whole presentation. So we need you to remember that for everything that we're doing, you need to give us 3 weeks. Whether that's processing your application, asking a counselor for a recommendation, asking a teacher for a recommendation, asking an outside person to write you a recommendation and send it. You need to give people at least 3 weeks. That's really super important. You have to remember that counselors have between 80 and 100 seniors. So if you're late on something, there's probably 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 other students who might be in the same boat as you. And now nobody's stuff is going to get there on time. So give everybody at least 3 weeks in order for your information for your college applications. We'll go to the next one. We have put together this slide so that you know exactly what dates you need to follow to remember the 3-week deadlines. So if you're a college, if you're applying and you're trying to hit a November 1st deadline, the college deadline, then you may need to make sure that that school is in your Naviance account. that you've requested your transcript, that if you need a letter of recommendation from a teacher or counselor, that by the 11th, they have everything they need to write that letter, that you have sent your ACT scores or SAT scores and given them enough time so they can hit the November 1st deadline. Everything needs to be received for your application to be complete. So October 11th for a November 1st deadline, October 25th for a November 15th deadline, December 2nd for a January 1st deadline. And that might seem like a really long time because winter break is in there. So when we have a deadline that's over a break, we're talking school time in order to get your stuff done, because most of us don't write letters of recommendation over a break, okay? And then December 20th, right before we go to break, for a January 15th deadline. Sorry, Ms. Daneko. Now we can move on to the next screen. So keep those dates in mind. Some of the common errors that happen for students when they're filling out college applications. A lot of times in an essay, they may have written an essay that they know they can use for multiple schools, and then they forget to change the name of the university from the first school that they sent it to. So you actually send that same letter without changing the name to multiple schools, and then that school goes, not us. Wonder how serious they are about applying to this school. Make sure you have other people read your essays and your applications and everything that you're sending, to make sure there are no grammatical errors. Okay, so you want to make sure that that everything is perfect. You want that school to get that information, not with spelling errors, not with lack of capitalizations. It's not a text, it's an actual important essay that you're writing and important information that you're filling out. You did not request a letter in Naviance or on time and given people enough time to write that stuff. So this is the first time in your life probably that for a lot of students, they have to hit the deadline. You call a school and say, oh, I'm sorry, that came in 2 days late. I wanted it to be for early decision or early action. They're going to tell you, nope, now you're in the regular decision pool. So you have to hit the deadlines. That is the most important thing, especially when all of the student information is there on time. If a teacher recommendation comes in late, that's not on you. So you just need to take care of your own deadlines, and you have to hit them. Another error that a student makes is not sending their transcript when they go into Naviance, forgetting to send their test scores, because as Ms. Daneko said, you have to do that from the school's website. So you have to go to College Board or actstudent.org, and you have to send your stuff from them. We can't help you with that stuff. And again, missing deadlines, priority deadlines, scholarship deadlines, so important. So do the best you can in that area to be able to apply in the timeline that you're looking at, okay? More colleges are allowing you to self-report, and that sometimes is grades, courses, and ACT, SAT scores. The University of Minnesota went to that and has, it seemed to be a pretty successful thing for students. So you would go to your transcript, and about that coming up, but you would go to your transcript, put all of the classes that you have taken, 9 through 12, and the grades that coincide with those classes, and your ACT or SAT score, and then they're going to make a decision on your application based on what you've reported. The most important thing about that is you have to report accurately, because ultimately at the end, they're going to get your final transcript and they're going to see what you have taken in the grades. So please don't embellish on those applications that let you self-report. Be very accurate with those. You can find your transcript on campus, and we want you to go in there and look at your transcript right now. We are in the process of adding outside grades. So if you took a class this summer at Northern Star Online or through Tonka Online, we haven't gotten some of those yet. So But we want to make sure you continually look at your transcript to make sure that those get on there and you can report those grades to colleges. So look for outside grades, summer grades, PSEO grades, and make sure that everything that you've taken is on your transcript and that we have a record of that. Step college apps, course history, GPA, look at all of that information, use it for that. Make sure you are using, if a school asks, if they don't ask you for a weighted or unweighted GPA and you have one, if they're not looking for something specific, use your weighted if you have it. Otherwise, if a lot of schools will ask you for your regular GPA, and that would be your unweighted GPA. Step 3, request official transcripts. If you don't request your official transcripts through Naviance and you try to send something through campus, it's not official and the college won't take that. So make sure you request it through Naviance so we can send an official transcript for you. Next, we have scholarship information. For scholarships, Naviance has an excellent list of scholarships. If you go into the colleges tab in Naviance and scroll down, you'll see a scholarship list, and there's a couple of different ways to look at that. Really the best source of scholarships will come from the schools you're applying to. So look at their websites and see if they have the information, if their information is something that you're able to fill out. And there are other websites out there, fastweb.com, scholarships.com. There's lots of places to look for scholarships. Like, it's kind of a bummer, but when you're done applying to colleges, a lot of students will come in and ask, now how do I look for scholarships? And it's kind of that whole college application process again, filling out applications, sending it in, waiting. So if you want to do that at the same time as you're applying, great. Otherwise, you can wait and apply for scholarships maybe in the new year. But scholarships are available throughout the year. So the more you look and apply for scholarships, the more likely you are to get them. Next, we have financial aid and the CSS profile. FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. The application opens on October 1st. So if you're trying to apply for some early deadlines, it might make sense that on October 1st, you fill out the FAFSA. It's going to require the tax returns of 2019 to fill those out. So a lot of times parents will need to do some of the work in that as well as the student. And then the CSS profile is it's kind of like the FAFSA on steroids. They ask a lot more questions and it'll take a little bit longer, but there are about 400 institutions in the country that CSS profile. Otherwise, the rest of the schools will only look for the FAFSA. Another piece to, Ms. Danenko talked about early decision as a way to apply. And that binding contract, the only way you can get out of that contract is the cost of the school and not being able to pay for it. But that is truly something that you need to know before going into an early decision contract. So if you are applying for a November 1 early decision school, you need to have your FAFSA figured out. You need to know that you can pay for that school. For an early decision deadline, your parent is signing the agreement. You are signing the agreement as the student, and your counselor is assigning the agreement saying, we understand that this student is making this decision. So it's really important to know that you can pay for the school if they admit you. So do that FAFSA as early as possible so you know how much money that school is going to give you, if they're going to give you any. Okay. Next, let's see. The great thing about the FAFSA is that there are ways that you may be given based on your financial need. So there's going to be the possibility for student or parent loans. You may get a campus work study job, and that means working at the front desk of a dorm. My niece worked as, there was one central place where all the mail was, and she was the mail sorter, and she loved that job. She got to know a ton of people in that job. There's Mr. Hackbarth will talk about, he met his wife in his work study job. So that's a pretty cool opportunity. It's a great way to meet people. There's need-based aid and grants. So grants are the money that you don't have to pay back. So unless you fill out the FAFSA, you're not going to know if you qualify for any of that information or any of that money. So it's really important that I would like the entire class of 2021 to fill out the FAFSA, because you never know what's going to come from it unless you fill it out. So as you can see on the last bullet, if you fill it out, some schools will give you merit aid. And I've had a couple of students come back and say, I didn't get any money through the FAFSA, but all of the work study jobs that were taken at the beginning of the year, they had more of those. And because I filled out one of those campus work study jobs, so they wouldn't have known a student that wanted to work on campus had they not filled out the FAFSA. So that's kind of cool too. Next, we have resources. Tons of resources. Obviously, we've talked about the rep visits and them wanting to talk to you, the college virtual tours. I did a NACAC virtual, or I did a NACAC college fair, and it was very cool. I got to meet with reps and ask my questions for Edina students, and it's really a cool process. So we're going to have some of those things on our website, and we encourage you to do those as well. Be prepared with questions, and that's going to be really helpful for you. The counselor website, and I think everybody has talked about that in our group, the class of 2021 website, we have everything on there that you're going to need in this process of applying to college, and many other things. So forms are on there. There's a ton of information on there for you on the counseling website, which is student services. Naviance, the My Planner tab, tasks that we have assigned to you. The Access program, we're still kind of up in the air, right, of having volunteers come into the building. So we will update you on the Access program. So let us know what you need and how we can help you. And then join our Twitter. We would love for you we will remind you of things. We will give you all new information. If you go to @Edina Counselors and join us, we'll tweet at you. And that would be awesome to have you on our site. And then last of all, we're going to go to questions.
All righty, folks. Great jobs, colleagues. You all did wonderful presenting. I am stepping back in to help moderate a chat. We've had a few questions come up throughout our discussion today. I believe Ms. Schmidt first talked about this question a little bit, but we can reiterate. So the question comes from Liliana, and it is, how likely is it that you can be released from an early decision agreement if you have an issue with a financial plea? Who wants to take it? And make sure, colleagues, that you unmute yourself if you're going to take it.
I'll take it because I talked about that as part of my thing. It's the only way to get out, but you really need to do your due diligence, and you need to know whether you can pay for the school beforehand. If the school costs $72,000 and if you get, let's say you get a package and they're going to give you $24,000, you need to know, can I pay for the rest of that school? So you need to know, no matter what, whether they give you nothing or a little bit of money, how's that $72,000 going to be paid for? Okay, so that's your job to do the research beforehand. Fill out the forms.
Yep. Make sure you're checking out those net price calculators as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that. Thanks, Ms. Schmidt. I mean, it was totally eloquently spoken about. And I just would add the net price calculators, no matter what grade level you're in, they just give you a forecast of what you're expected to pay, minus any free money. So what the net price would be for you. And that's a really good way to do it. Even if you're kind of simultaneously filling out the FAFSA CSS profile, that just gives you a gauge. So run those and just, I think Mr. Schmidt said it well.
And then this one came up in the chat, and I answered it there, but I think it's worth talking about. So this is from a parent who is going through this process for a second time. And for parents, you may have experienced before, we used to have something called a pink sheet, which we use for transcript updates. So the question comes from Chris. If I'm understanding correctly, are the pink sheets over, those binders over? Does the online request replace that? Who wants to take that one?
I can. It does indeed all of that. We had to figure out a way for all students to be able to participate in this process, whether they're going to be fully on our Edina Academy or if they're going to be doing the hybrid model. So we needed to figure out a process for all students to be able to access this. So going through the step-by-step of how to request a transcript, how to request letter of recommendation, all of that is going to be done virtually if they follow the steps, either from this video or actually that are hyperlinked in the PowerPoint that's going to be up on Class of 2021's website.
All right, and we're just going to keep motoring through these. From Catherine. So Catherine said that she's having an issue accessing her Naviance account through the student portal. Catherine, we hear you. We've heard from several students that that was an issue, and we communicated with the Department of Media and Technology Services, DMTS, in the district, and they said that the issue has been resolved. We'll circle back with them again to make sure that those accounts are, that you're all able to access your Naviance accounts, because we understand how important getting in and getting comfortable on that platform as we get into the school year is. So hang tight, Catherine. We're working on it, and thanks for letting us know. Okay. Next question. If a student is applying to a school that requires a recommendation, is it advisable to request the recommendation be sent to all schools, even those where it is optional? And I'll hand that over to
that's an excellent question. I would say to you, sure. And when a student is requesting the teacher, there might be some schools that don't allow them to click on the box because they don't want to look at it. So that's a slick way to answer it. I don't think there's any harm if a teacher's writing one to send them to all if you haven't exceeded the total number allowed for that particular school. It is very true that some schools who don't require it might not look at it. Some schools that are very formula oriented, such as I know we referenced Iowa State, they're not going to look at a letter of recommendation because they're going to put you through an RAI formula, and thus they wouldn't look at a letter of rec. But certainly there's not a harm if it's just there and not looked at. So I would say go ahead and do it, and the letter of rec tab is going to allow the student to demark if they are going to be able to send it.
And there are some schools out there that say, if you send it, we will shred it. So they really don't want letters of recommendation.
And then this is our last question right now. So if anyone has additional questions, feel free to throw them in the live chat on the YouTube. But this one comes from Jane. If your teacher recommender's email is not in Naviance, how will they submit their letter?
Hi, Jane. I'm going to answer it because I know you. If your teacher has retired, we need to make teachers back in. If they're a teacher who was formerly here, otherwise you could just let me know who it is, and one of our admin assistants will contact them and make sure that they get back into Naviance. Okay. Anybody else have another?
I would just add, yeah, especially if it is a teacher at Edina. If it is somebody outside of Edina, I kind of glossed over that a little bit. We would not be using Naviance to send that. You're going to have to ask that teacher to submit it. If you're using the Common App, you can request that community member or that outside of Edina person to write on your behalf and send them a link to send it through Common App. If it's not Common App and you need a letter of recommendation, that community member, that non-Edina person is going to have to send it old school, either via mail or email to the admission committee at that particular institution.
So those are all the questions that came up in the chat. Does anyone want to give any closing remarks before we end our presentation today?
I would just like to say, if you're a senior here and you have a friend that you know that didn't watch this, please tell them to watch the video. And as referenced millions of times, please go to the Class of 2021 website, because the quick how-to of this process is there, as well as the videos. We really need your help to kind of disseminate the how-tos on this process, because of the fact that right now as counselors, we're registering new students, getting everyone ready for the first day. And so it's hard for us to be able to meet with students individually right now. We are going to have a senior parent evening regarding financial aid and things later. So pay attention to your school emails, your Schoology. Let your friends know who weren't able to make this to watch this video, which is going to help us. That parent out there, kudos to you for bringing up the pink sheet. Yeah, that's absolved and we're not using that anymore. So this is our new process, and we want students to have it be seamless and use Naviance to do so. So utilize the tools you have in front of you, and then of course beyond that, we're here to support you.
Well, thanks to everyone who joined our information session today. We hope you all stay healthy and get ready for the school year, because we're just a week out. So happy Friday.
Thanks, everybody.